So the agenda, things that we're going to cover today. So we know it is the upgrade webinar. So what we're going to be looking at in today's session is the new welcome page. So we've got some new information on our welcome page. So when you log into the system, it's going to look slightly different. And the reason it looks slightly different is connected to our new Appraisal Wizard. So we've got a way that you can now do a very quick and dirty appraisal. So it's referred to as back of the fab packet, I think some people refer to it as. We can show you how we're going to do that now. So we have some information on that for you in today's session. Because of the way that the new Appraisal Wizard works, we might have to look at the way your unit libraries are set up. So there's some things that need to now go in the unit library defaults in order for your wizard to work. So we'll be looking at the changes you might need to make on an administrative side for that. We've now got a new option where we can copy the folder structure. So if you've created a folder structure, rather than having to recreate it several times, we can now just copy that, which is a nice, quick and easy feature, which we have been asked for by a number of clients during the admin setup process. And we've also got some nice filters in the admin settings as well now. So when you are creating your system setup in the first place, creating your sensitivity scenarios and things like that, setting up your permissions, you can now use those filter options. So I'm going to be showing you how all of those work. So really exciting stuff to go through in today's session. Okay, so without further ado, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my ProVal onto the screen and let's get started. Okay, so when we log in now, you'll see that I've got my login details here. I'm just going to log in with my just general user rather than my admin first of all, so you can see that view. Clicking in here and clicking on OK is going to go in to my ProVal system, and what you can see now is this is our new start page here. So what we can see really nicely here is rather than having to go into the project tree to see things like your recent appraisals and also your templates, you can see that actually we can see these on the front page here. So create a new appraisal, we have them, my templates here, and these are my recent appraisals. And the other thing that is a little bit different here is previously in the project tree, the recent folder here, this was everything that was relating to the system being opened for all users, and you can see that actually this differs to what I can see on this page, and the main welcome page now, this recent appraisals, is user specific. So I still have the recent in the project tree where I can see other people's appraisals that have been open, but what I can now see on the main screen here is my appraisals that I've been working on. Okay, so we can see those across the bottom here, and I can click onto those and I can access those appraisals just as I would previously. So just clicking onto Broadwater Way there, you can see that then that will open up and that's in my preview mode, so I can access my most recent appraisals from here now. Okay, at the bottom you will see that we have these icons. These are our products that SDS are working on at the moment and delivering to you guys. We have our Landval, we have ProVal, we have Sequel, we have Home Match, we have our Housing Development Manual, and we also have Stock Profiler. And if you want to know any information about any of these products, all you need to do is click onto them, and you can see that that will then open up in my screen here. So you can see straight away opening up there for me. Okay, so I'm just going to go back to my ProVal now, and we can see back in there. Okay, so the new wizard, as I was saying earlier, is relating to this new front page, and we can see now these are our templates. So historically what we used to do is we used to go to a folder and we would land on a folder and right click and choose new appraisal from template. and we would select them from here. That still works. You can still do it the old way if you want to, but now we don't even need to be in the project tree in order to create our appraisals. We can just select from here, so you click on create appraisal and it will open up. And now it opens up in this new wizard format as well. So I can see this is my new appraisal wizard. And what we have is we have these 4 tabs. We have the context, we have expenses, we have dwellings, and we have income. Now, if you want to do an appraisal the old way, you can just completely skip out of the wizard by clicking on the start page or any of the pages of the appraisal. You'll see that they still appear at the top here. So by clicking in any of these, the wizard will close and I can then just go back in and do my appraisal the old way. But if I just wanted to do a quick and dirty appraisal, this wizard now opens up. And it only opens up the first time when you are creating a new appraisal. And once you've skipped out of it, there's no way that you can go back to it. So you just use it to start off with and then add in information to your appraisal. And as I say, it is a quick and dirty. So it's just basic appraisal information to give us a ballpark figure on where we are with this appraisal, and then we would then go in and add additional information into the appraisal. So what we can see, first of all, appraisal template here, the template I selected, although I can change it from here as well. If I want to, you'll see that there is a drop down here. So if I decided that actually I want to do it on the other template, then I can switch that over from here, and you can see that I just changed the unit handover there. So I've got different templates with different unit handovers in here, so depending on what I want to do. But I could also change that first unit handover here as well. So you can see that's currently November 2020. So that's based on my current milestones that I have in that template of what my first unit handover would be. But of course I can change that. I can come in here and I can adjust these as appropriate. So I might say, well, actually, I think that's going to be more like April next year. It's going to be a few months, or May, whatever I want to do, and just select a date from in there. Oops, I didn't seem to click that properly, so let me just do that again. So let's go June the 14th. There we go, clicked on it better that time. Okay, so then underneath that you can see I have a red mandatory field. It's my local authority, and again you'll see that I've got some errors down here at the moment. My local authority is required, so I'm going to come in here and add that in here. So my local authority, I do have the drop down option in here again, so I can add that in. And I'm going to choose Waverley. So if I start typing, you can see it still has that nice filter on there that I can select, and I'm going to choose Waverley there. Now, postcode isn't mandatory, but again, a postcode is really good if I want things like my local housing allowances to be populated, especially if I'm doing things like affordable rent based on local housing allowance. By adding this postcode in, it's going to give me that broad rental market area. So I'm going to add in my postcode here. This is our office postcode in there, so you just add that in as like so, as normal. Okay, so that is the main context page filled out. Very quick and easy to add that information in. The next tab is our expenses tab. So in here, what we can see is this is based on our normal section B of our appraisal. So we have our land purchase, we have works, we have on costs, and we have contingency. Okay, now land cost, as you can see, it's currently set to lump sum, which is this field here, but again I do have a drop down, so I can select different options from here. So I can do lump sum, I can do per unit, and I can also do per square meter in there as well. So depending on what my option is, I can select from there. So I'm going to go for lump sum for this appraisal, and I'm just going to put in 2 million. So 2M gives me 2 million there. So that's added that in there. Next is my works contract, and now you can see this works contract currently per square meter, but again I have that drop down in here. So again, lump sum, per unit, or per square meter. It's a quick and dirty appraisal because so I don't know really exactly what my lump sum is going to be. So I'm going to say roughly 2.2k per square metre. So 2,200 per square metre is going to be my works contract. Then we've got on costs. Now, depending on how you've set up your template, if you have a detailed fee analysis where you have put in various different information for things like legal fees, clerk of works, employers agents, engineers, surveys, things like that, and you have got basic assumptions in your appraisal already, then you can use your detailed fee analysis that you already have. I know some companies do have some kind of standard percentages and per unit costs that they have in their templates already. But if you haven't got that detailed fee analysis already, then you can use this estimate allowance for fees and on cost. And you can see this is a percentage of acquisition and works. And currently the kind of industry standard is about 15%. So I'm just going to put that in. So 15% of my acquisition and works total that I've calculated at the top here is what I'm going to allow for my fees. And then down here, you can see I've got my contingency. So currently it's set as a percentage of works. But again, I have that drop down. I can add in a per unit, a per square metre, or even a lump sum figure if I want to. Mine's defaulted to 2% because that's what I've got in my template currently. But of course, I can edit that. I could change that to 3% if I wanted to. Okay, so you can change that from what you've got currently set in your defaults. So that is our expenses tab. Again, quite quick and easy to add in there. The next tab you can see is our dwellings, and this is where we can start adding in our unit information. So these are the units that I have currently set up. If I go back to my project tree, in my defaults, these are my unit types that I have in here. So I can see that information in there, but rather than the old way where we used to drag and drop them into our appraisal, we can now see them just listed in here, and we can see the types that we've got here down the side. Now I've got a couple of different ones in here, so you can see 2-bed 3-person, 2-bed 4-person flat is actually 2-bed 3 down here as well, and that's because there's different sizes. So again, when we go to talk a little bit later about how we set up our unit information, you will see here down here we've got a calculation for floor area. So we like now to have some basic assumptions in for floor area, especially if in the expenses area you are doing works contracts per square metre. If in your dwellings you don't have those sizes set up in your unit libraries, then per square metre isn't going to calculate. So we do need to make sure that that's in our unit defaults. So what I'm going to do is going to add in some information in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a couple of social rent flats. I'm going to do, let's see, 4 affordable rent flats. I'm going to do some 2-bed 4-person houses. So I'm going to do 2 outright sale, and you can see on the left-hand side, my appraisal is now calculating for me. I'm going to do 4 of the outright sale, and I'm going to do, let's do some 3-bed 5, and let's do them as outright sale as well. So I've added in now 14 units. You can see over here on the right hand side, my totals are now calculating. So I've got 6 2-bed 3-person flats. I've got 6 2-bed 4-person houses, and I've got 2 3-bed 5-person houses. Okay, and it gives me a total of 14 there at the bottom. Lovely stuff. Okay, down here I can see those total number of units are calculating. I've got my total floor area. Again, I've got total bedrooms and total persons. So again, when you're setting up your units now, if you add in the number of people and the number of bedrooms in your defaults, then that will then calculate here in the wizard. And on the left-hand side now, you can see in my summary panel, those units have now inputted in there. And you can see I've got very negative MPVs at the moment. And that's because I haven't put any income in yet. So of course, that is what I'm going to add in next. So really quick and easy to add your units in, as long as you've got your unit library default set up correctly, which your administrators will need to ensure. You can just literally just come in here and add in the number into these fields, and it will then calculate for you. So the last section, this is our income section here. So click into here. So income is divided into two sections here. We have our subsidy, so where we're going to be getting any grant from. And then underneath that, we can now see any sales and rental income. So first of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in some subsidy. So in here, I can do it as a total. I can do it as per unit, or I can do it as per person. So making sure you have selected the correct tab here. So I'm going to go into per unit, and for my social and affordable, I'm going to say that I'm going to get 75k for these units. So in there, 75k. Obviously not going to get any grant for my outright sale, but I'm going to say I'm going to get 40k for my shared ownership units there. So just adding that in, and if I go back, you can see that's now added that in as the totals in here, and it's also obviously calculated it per person for me as well. And I can see my average totals on the right hand side here as well. Okay, so that's all calculating for me. And of course, that's had a little bit of an effect on my MPV. I still have quite a negative MPV, but now what we need to have a look at is our sales and our rental income. So coming down here, sales units here. So I've got, you can see by these colours, these are my outright sale and my shared ownership units. I've got my 2-bed, 4-person houses and my 3-bed, 5. So this was based on the Waverley area in Cranley. So our 2-bed, 4-person houses go for 500k. So just putting that in there. And we can see all that's having an effect already on my summary panel. And my 3-bed, 5-person house, we're looking for about 580. And I know that some of you are probably thinking, wow, look at those prices, depending on where you are in the country. So you can see, there we go, that's had a nice little effect on my MPV there. On the left-hand side, you can see that that's now all populating. Right, so we have done that section. Now we're just going to pull down this little bit here just so we can see that a little bit more. So we've added in our sales income. Now we need to work out what our rent is going to be. So first of all, I can see my 2-bed, 4-person house, which is my shared ownership. It's calculating that as 2.75% of my unsold equity, because that's what I've got as my default in my appraisal templates in my unit libraries. But you can of course adjust that on a scheme by scheme basis. So if you were doing an area that you thought actually that was a little bit high, you could lower it down if you wanted to. You can see on my 2-bed, 3-person flat, it's affordable rent. I can see that by this colour, yellow. It's 80% of the market rent with an LHA cap. So that's what I've currently got set in my template. But what I need to tell the system is what my market rent is going to be. So that's my field that's missing here, is my market rent. So my market rent currently for a 2-bed, 3-person flat is about £300 a week in this area. And you can see that that now calculates here 80% of the market rent with the LHA cap. It's giving me £227.27. Okay, so now, oh, look at that already. I have a nice positive MPV coming over here. So you can see, look at that coming down, and that information is now updating for me. And finally, what I need to do now is I just need to add in my target rent for my social rent. So I can see this is based on 100% of target rent. My target rent is calculated by my local authority, which I've put in earlier, my number of bedrooms, which is obviously in my unit templates, and now I need to add in my January 99 value. So that's 145,000, which gives me a target rent of £149 per week. So we can see that that's now all been adjusted for me. And now I can see that actually my scheme, my loan is repaying at year 27. Okay, so I can see that that has now all calculated for me. So as a rough and ready appraisal, I could have a little look at that and I could say, right, is that going to be realistic? Am I going to want to do that scheme? I can always come back at this point and I can swap my dwellings around. So if actually I said, I want that to be shared ownership rather than outright sale, I can flip that over, just come back. I now need to add in the income there. So that's now 580 in there instead. So I just need to come in and have a look. Does that make that a little bit better? Yeah, I'm happier with that. I can see that that works a little bit better. So you can do that all in here as well, just like you did previously in the main appraisal. If you need to come back to any of these pages, you can just click between them and adjust them as appropriate. But once we click out of the wizard, then the wizard is closed and we can no longer go back into it. So once we've done our quick and dirty appraisal here, if we now wanted to go in and adjust anything on a scheme by scheme basis, a little bit more in depth, then of course we can do that. And to do that, really easy, just click into one of the pages. So if I go into the start page, you can see the wizard now closes and I can now come in and adjust any further information. So I can add in things like my funding year if I want to. All that information is already pre-populated for me based on what I had in my appraisal. So you can see my number of units there, that's calculated for me. My scheme handover date, that's populated there. Of course, I can go in and I can adjust my milestones if I want to. So you can see these are my standard milestones. I added in my first handover, but what I can do is I can adjust these as appropriate if I need to. The site address information, I put that postcode in, so it's giving me that latitude and longitude, and of course that all important BRMA, the broad rental market area for my local housing allowances. If I go into section A, if I just open that up, you can see I've got my unit information in here, so it's added all those units in. Obviously I zeroed out that outright sale, but it had started populating for me, so it still sits in there, and you can see I've got that 0. But of course I could come in and I could adjust that if I wanted to. So if I wanted to swap those 2 unit types back, I can do that here as well. Or of course I can just cross and take out that column if I want to. If I open up the additional attributes here, I'll just open that up here, you can see obviously I'm missing 2 current market values for these flats. They weren't relevant for the wizard to work because these units aren't based on current market value. But if I wanted to have a look at over here, you can see my cost to value ratio, that hasn't populated. So if I, of course, wanted to add that in, I could. So if I say 320k for a 2-bed flat here, I can add that in. It doesn't make any difference to my MPV or my IRR, but you can see it now gives me that cost to value ratio here. Everything else is just standard as I've set in the template in that additional attributes area. You can see my January 99 values obviously pulled through. My MPV rates haven't changed. My sales and staircasing information hasn't changed. That's just my standard template information. Nothing's changed in my rent allowances. All those management maintenance, they all should be in your templates as standard. If I go down to the rent section, what you can see in here is obviously my market rents calculated in here, and my residential rents are calculated down here based on what I put in that wizard. If I go into section B, this is my capital costs. I can see obviously I've got my acquisition at the top here. So that's now been input based on that wizard. If I open up my works section, I can see I've got that works contract that I put in. I might want to now add in something additional to my appraisal. Of course, I can do that. There's nothing stopping me editing this appraisal now. If I put in a little bit in there for demolition or something like that, that might have a little effect. You can see just slight adjustments over here. I've got that fee section now. The fee section previously had 3 areas: the unit level, the scheme level, and combined. we now have this assumption tab here as well. So that's the fees are currently calculated on that assumption that we put in the wizard of that 15%. Now, if I'd chosen in the wizard to do it on our detailed scheme analysis for the fees, that would be on this scheme level, and then I would be able to see this table here. And as I said, if you've got some standard assumptions in here with percentages and things like that, of course, you can use this detailed fee analysis. So depending on how you have set up your templates, if you have this detailed fee analysis in your template already filled out, then of course you can use that in the wizard. Otherwise, you can use that assumption that we had here. And then finally, down in the other section, there was my contingency, and I adjusted that to 3%. So that's all come through. Section C, which is my subsidy section, that has added in that subsidy that I put in the wizard, and you can see that that has now just added that in there for me. Okay, so all that information is drawn through, and then what we can do is we can then just adjust anything additional. So it is a very quick way of doing an appraisal, and then things like milestone adjustments, handovers, things like that, you can then edit within the scheme because they won't have a major effect on the appraisal. We're just putting the key information in there. Okay. Okay, so once we have done that, it's all about saving the appraisal. Where are we going to save the appraisal to? What you'll see is that the wizard actually opens up in the unfiled section. And rather than just coming in here and saving it, what we have now introduced for you is in our savings options. So at the top here of our tab, this is where we do our normal saving. You'll see we have our save and close options in here. So everything works as normal. You can save your changes as you go along. Absolutely, of course, you can do that. Discard any changes. We'll just leave it as a blank. So it will take out everything that you've put in the wizard and just have a blank kind of appraisal open. But the save and close option here, when I click that now, you'll see that you get this pop-up. And this is now where I tell the system where I want to save this appraisal. So what you can see here is these are our folder structure. So I've got my feasibility folder here. I did this appraisal in the Waverley area, so I'm going to put that in here. And then I can add in my scheme name in here. Okay, so let's call this Cranley News. Okay. So I've selected my feasibility folder and Waverley, and selecting save there will then add that to the correct folder. So the idea is that it will prompt people to save it in the right folder and not just leave appraisals in the unfiled section. So if I now go back to my tree, open up my Waverley folder, you can see there is my Cranley News in here. And of course, now I've saved it down, I can just open it up using my edit options as well. And next time I log in, it will appear in my recent appraisals section here. So that page just needs to be refreshed for it to appear on that area. But when I log out and log back in, that's where it will appear. Okay, so before I go on to the next section, does anybody have any questions for me on the wizard so far? It's been quite quiet in the chat window. If you have any questions, just raise your hand for me now. Otherwise, I will carry on to the next section. So Katie says, no, all okay. Any comments about the wizard? What do you think of that? Do you like it? Do you think it will help you with your appraisals to do quick appraisals? We are looking for feedback on this new feature. So Mona says, looks good, lovely. Okay, nice positive feedback there. I really like it. I think it's going to make creating appraisals so much quicker and easier. If you just need to do a very, very quick, should we look at this scheme, then absolutely. So Mark's saying, looks like it may save a bit of time. Absolutely, Mark. getting your key criteria in there, seeing very good for quick Section 106 offers. Yes, absolutely, Mona. So yeah, hopefully this will help you guys. So yeah, Roz says I agree, and the front opening page is a great addition. Yes, I really like that. And I'm not just saying that because it was my idea, Roz. I do think it is having that information on that main page, seeing those recents and clicking on to create an appraisal from there, I think is going to make the schemes a lot easier. The wizard wasn't my idea. I can't take a praise for that. But yeah, having something on the front screen that we could just click on, I think is going to make things really, really quick and easy for people, especially when they're new to ProVal. So what I've just done is I have logged out and logged back in again now as an administrator. And what I want to do is talk to you about your templates and your unit libraries that you have set up. So in your defaults, you have your templates and you have your unit types. So something that is important now, as I was talking when I was doing that wizard, is to have your milestones set up correctly. So because this will pick up based on things like your handovers and things like that. So do have a look at your milestones, how they're set up. The only one you can obviously change in the wizard is the first handover date. So I know it's very kind of thumb in the air guessing when it comes to these milestones, but just making sure that they are in the correct order, and that you have some kind of standard spacing between your milestones, so that when we do adjust those, that it looks realistic in the scheme. So that's something that's important to be set up in your templates, as is your capital cost section, which is your fee analysis. So if you are wanting to use that detailed fee analysis, making sure that this is set up correctly with some standard inputs in there. And of course, your development cash flow, when you are looking at your forecasting of when you are spending money in your project, just looking at how these have been set up and making sure again that they are realistic for your project. Obviously, once you've done the wizard, you can come in and adjust all these things as much as you want, but just from your wizard purposes, just making sure that these defaults are set in a way that is going to be realistic for you. I know a lot of this is kind of very kind of thumb in the air guessing to start off with, but the more kind of realistic you can make it to your projects, the better your wizard appraisals will be. So just some things that you need obviously there in your template. And also, if I just go down to my system settings, I've got my unit generators here that I use to create my unit libraries. And so just things that we need to consider in here. I know that I have been to some places before and they have just like flat and house in here. They don't have sizes, they don't have number of people, number of bedrooms. If you are using the wizard, you are going to need to separate these out so that you have different size units. If you don't, then you will find that this summary panel doesn't populate without that information. So that might be something that you need to adjust for your administrator. So things like the number of bedrooms and the number of people, if you want that information to populate in there. Things like if you're doing flats, maybe any additional floor spacing. If you're doing your works on per square meter, you might need to consider for flats communal spacing. So is that included in the net? This will be your net floor area at the top here. Adding that in will then give you your gross floor area. And when we're doing our quick calculation for works, we'll probably want to be on the gross floor area. You should normally have things set up in your units for MPV, rent, sales and staircasing, rent allowances, and how your rents are calculated anyway. So that should just already be in there as standard. So just be aware of making sure that those units are set up correctly. Okay, does anybody have any questions for me on the unit setup? Or any of you administrators? Is that something that you will need to do? or do you think your units are set up correctly for the wizard as it is at the moment? Maybe you need a little bit of help with that. If you do, I'll be talking about something we can do for that a little bit later. Is there any documentation we can refer to? Absolutely, Mark. You should see in the GoTo training panel, there is a materials download. So I have put in there a little PDF about the Appraisal Wizard and how that works. So Katie says, if you change the units file, does it automatically update in the defaults? No, you need to save those units down to the default, Katie. If I just open that up again onto the screen for you. When you do your units, if you make any adjustments in here, I think, to be honest, Katie, when I came to you and we set these up, they should automatically be in there, because I did have this in mind when we did that. But right click, save as default, you choose your folder, and you'll just need to make sure you tick this overwrite existing to add that in. So that's in there. Mark, we do have a document about unit setup, and we also do e-learning sessions. I don't know if any of you guys know about our e-learning sessions that we do. Katie has been on some of our e-learning sessions, so she can tell you how awesome they are. Yeah, so if you have any issues with that, or you're not sure, there you go, Katie recommends them. There are admin sessions, and they'll be running in April, from the beginning of April. So the first one is an intro to admin. The second one is about setting up and adjusting your templates. The third one is all about setting up your units and things like that. So you can always come onto those sessions. They are £70 per person, so they are nice and cheap. We're not charging you too much, and they're about an hour and a half, and they're an interactive training session online. So do sign up for those. Information's on our website. But there is a admin guide as well that you can download, or I can send to you. So if you are interested in that, do let me know, and I can email the guide to you as well. So yeah, especially Anne, yes, you say you're the administrator. Apart from standard house types, you currently just have flat, house and bungalow. So yeah, you will need to adjust yours. So yeah, Mona says she needs to sort out unit types, so please help with this. Absolutely. So what I'll do is I'll have a look at sending the guide out to you guys, and we'll also maybe have a little look at the e-learning sessions, because you might need to get some help there as well. Okay, lovely stuff. So I'm just going to close that. So one of the other things that I told you about was the folder structure copying. So if I go up to my feasibility folder, you can see, is that not, sorry, updating, let's just double check, there we go. So if I go up to my feasibility folder here, what you can see in here is I have feasibility. I've got Guildford, Waverley and Woking. So these are like my little areas. And what I can do is, rather than having to recreate these folders in each of these ones down here, we've now added in a quick and easy copy folder structure. So I can just do that. It will then duplicate that folder structure for me. And then what I could do is I could then rename the top folder, so to finance check. Oh, like so. And of course, then I can duplicate that as many times as I want. So if you have got a folder structure in place, rather than manually creating that folder structure time and time again, then we can just readjust that like so. And obviously just get rid of my old one there, just drag and drop that to my trash. So there we go, I can see that that's now added in there, and I put my little Meadow Muse into Guildford. So nice dragging and dropping, copying there for us with our folder structure. So if you are setting up those, nice and easy to add in now. Okay, so finally, the last thing that I mentioned was our filtering options. So If I now go up to administration and sensitivity scenarios. So Anne is saying, is the copy folder structure open to all? I believe it is, Anne. Yeah, I believe that anybody can do that copy folder structure. But again, in the permissions, you can turn it off. So if I go into permissions, we now have this filter option at the top here. So if I type in copy, like that, then if I come down into, should give me my copy options. Let's try that again. There we go. So copy, context menu, and I've got that copy option there. And of course, we can then turn that off and turn that on again as we would normally with the permissions. So copy folder, there we are, copy folder structure. You can turn it off if you don't want people to be able to do it other than administrators. So if I turn that off now, it would only be my administrators now that can do it. If I leave it blank or ticked, then everybody can do it. So that will be in your permissions. So as it is, and it's available for everybody to do, but as an administrator, if you wanted to turn that off, that's how you do it in the permissions. And I got to show you the little filter scenario in there as well. So good question, good timing. So yeah, that little filter up there, you can now use that to search, because we do know that in these permissions areas there is lots of kind of information in these, so we can just now go in and say, for example, if I just wanted to do MPV, there we go, you can see that that now minimizes down just to the areas that have got MPV in. So obviously units have MPV in the additional attributes and the rent allowances. So it minimizes things out, because I know that this was quite an in-depth area that people kind of struggled to find the right permissions to lock down. So that's in there now in the little filter at the top here. Okay, we also have in the sensitivity scenario, so if you are looking to add in a new scenario, you can see new scenario here. I could say, well, for example, I'm looking at maybe my base inflation rate. When I go into add here, you can see drop down. Oh, look at all that. So if I now type in, if I can spell it right, inflation, it now shortens down that list. So I can select from there. So I can choose base inflation rate, and I can say, right, I want to see if it varies by 0.5. It's a percentage already, so I don't need to tick that. If I wanted to vary it by 10% or 5%, then I would tick that, but I just want to do it by 0.5 on my base inflation rate. And then, of course, I just add in my scenarios, so what my outputs are going to be, what I want to check it against, and what product types. So does my base inflation rate affect my MPV? Oh, didn't select that properly. MPV. Having a moment here. Let's try IRR. There we go. And is it for what product? Outright sale, for example. Okay. So yeah, you can use those and select and save for your searching now instead. So yeah, that list before was quite daunting for people. It was very daunting for me, but now we have that little search at the top now to help us to navigate around. Okay, so you'll find that filter is now in a few places, sensitivity scenarios, in our permissions as well. So do use that when you're setting up your systems. Okay, so that is everything that I need to show you with regards to the new features. Does anybody have any final questions for me, or any other queries or any comments that they would like to make? I'm gonna put up our support details on the screen for you. So obviously, if you have any questions or queries about anything that I've covered in today's session, there will be a link to the recording sent out. So within the next 24 hours, you'll get a link to the recording. We are going to publish it on our website as well. So if there's anyone that couldn't attend the session, then obviously you can give them the link. In the materials section, do download the little wizard that comes with today's session. And I will email Mark and Anne. I will email out the admin guide to you. If anyone else wants the admin guide, just let me know in the chat window now, and I will get that all sent out to you so that you've got that information. But of course, if you wanted to attend our e-learning sessions, this today we've done is a webinar, so it hasn't been that interactive for you guys. You've just been listening to me talk and demonstrate. But we do e-learning sessions where they are more interactive. I'm asking you questions, you're filling in information. I get you to draw on the screen and interact with what I'm doing. There's little assessments and quizzes and questions and things like that that needs to be done. So do come and join us on any of those. Each session is £70 per person plus VAT, and they are all advertised on our website. So if you do need any additional training and you don't feel like you need a whole training day with one of us guys coming out to visit you, then just come into one of our little sessions. They're little bite-sized chunks, about an hour and a half each session, and you can learn a lot just sitting at your computer desk, and they don't take up too much of your time. So do have a little look at those on there. But for now, thank you very much, everybody, for attending the session. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you're looking forward to using the upgraded version. Ros says, thank you, really useful. Looking forward to getting the upgrade. Yes, please, I can have the admin guide too. And Anne says, thanks, that's been really useful. Peter says, thank you, Kat, very useful session. Good, I'm glad you've enjoyed it all. I love doing these sessions. I love interacting with you guys online. And of course, I'm so pleased that the wizard is going to be so helpful to all of you as well. We've spent a lot of time working on that and making sure that it was right for our customers. So that nice positive feedback is brilliant. No worries, absolutely, Mona. I will send that guide out to you as well. Peter, I'm glad you've enjoyed the session. Okay, so if there's no further questions, I'll wrap that up for today. But thank you very much, everybody, for joining us online, and enjoy the rest of the day and the weekend. Thank you very much and goodbye.